Governor Greg Abbott approves billions of new dollars for school districts. It comes at a critical time, but is it enough?
Districts will still be in a position to have to make some tough decisions.
With record funding on the way to Texas schools, why some worry the money falls short of the needs.
What began as harmless habit quickly spiraled into mental health crisis.
The plan to ban THC sparks a back and forth battle at the Capitol.
The only goal of these scare tactics was to frighten legislators and the public.
The message from opposite sides of the issue as they work to sway the decision over whether the ban becomes law. Governor Abbott declares victory in his push for bail reform, but opponents of his plan also claim a win.
From that perspective, we are very happy to say that we see this as an overall victory.
We look at why backers of bail reform say more needs to be done.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. This week, the governor signed into law what's being called the largest investment in public schools in the history of Texas. House Bill 2 would infuse an additional $8.5 billion into public schools. Capitol correspondent Dylan McKim shows us what this means for teachers and school districts.
Governor Greg Abbott is signing an $8.5 billion check. Money school districts say they desperately needed.
Texas is number one in so many categories. Texas should be number one in educating our children.
About half of the new dollars will go toward teacher pay raises, a priority for Governor Abbott this session.
Put more teachers on the pathway to being able to earn a six-figure salary.
For a smaller school district like Salado ISD, it means an $8,000 pay raise for teachers with more than 5 years of experience and a $4,000 pay bump for teachers with at least 3 years.
This bill will provide historic raises for our teachers here in Salado ISD.
School leaders have expressed their appreciation with this bill, but still some have concerns with the local control of these dollars, including one school district 300 miles south of Salado in Mercedes, Texas.
It doesn't really provide funding for the day-to-day issues that districts run across on any given day.
School leaders like Dr. Alicia Noyola hoped for a larger increase to the basic allotment, which gives school districts more flexibility on how to use those dollars. The structure of this bill earmarks those dollars for specific costs, a move supporters say will free up the basic allotment to be used for day-to-day costs.
To help out with those budget issues, there's $1.3 billion of this budget going toward that.
But Noyola still believes the new dollars will not be enough.
While we will have money for a number of programs, districts will still be in a position to have to make some tough decisions.
Dylan joins us now. Texas schools are getting an unprecedented amount of funding, but you've been hearing mixed responses to this bill. Who's happy? Who's concerned?
Well, in a way, everyone's happy, right? Because school districts are getting some much needed additional funding the first time since 2019. The governor is very happy because this bill goes after raising teacher pay salaries, and that was a huge priority for him in his emergency items. But when you talk to some of the school districts, I spoke to a few around our state, and they say, yes, we're happy with these new dollars. No one can spit at, even a $1 increase, but is it enough? There's a couple concerns there. One, they don't think that the dollars that are going in, even though it's $8.5 billion, is not enough to catch us up with the inflationary costs and the lack of funding from the past, 6 years now. And the second concern is that the way that finance is structured now, it ties these dollars, it earmarks them for certain purposes, kind of taking away some of the local control from the school districts. And that's what superintendents have told me that they're concerned about, is being able to use these dollars to pay for some of the day-to-day operations. Examples are like your AC goes out in one of your schools. How are you going to pay for that? So that's the biggest concern, but when you ask the governor about it, he says there is a new allotment, the ABC allotment, which is for all basic costs, and that should cover it. It was a $1.3 billion into it, but we'll just have to see as the school districts start getting these funds and they start creating their budgets, is it truly enough to meet all their needs and to help them catch up from this lack of funding.
Now, I want to talk about another education bill that you've been following, legislation to get rid of the STAR test. It's a big one we've been talking about for a while.
The STAR test, this was House Bill 4. When it passed the House, It eliminated the STAR test, which everyone, both Republican and Democrat alike, were all celebrating. No one seems to like the standardized tests that our students are taking right now. Same on the Senate side. But it really came down to a difference in how they were going to roll this out. And really, at the end of the day, the House never voted on the committee report. And it was a big question as to, well, why didn't they get to this? Well, Senator Paul Betancourt, who took the charge in the Senate, he went to Twitter and said, here's the real story of what happened. And there was a push from outside groups, education groups, and some in the House who didn't agree with the changes that were made in the bill. And ultimately, it was never given a vote. If you speak to Representative Gina Hinojosa, she took to Twitter, actually quote tweeting Paul Betancourt's tweet and saying, the Texas Senate thinks you're stupid. And was kind of attacked him and went after him and said that the version of the STAR test replacement that you put in your bill was just another 2.0 STAR test. It wasn't going to actually help our students. So at the end of the day, what we do know is that no agreement was made. Students will continue to take the STAR test, but you can rest assured that this will definitely be a topic of interest in 2027.
All right, Dylan McKim, thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh.
Governor Greg Abbott traveled to Houston for a ceremony to sign several bail reform bills. Making it harder for accused violent criminals to get out of jail was one of Abbott's 7 emergency items this session. But as Capitol reporter Adam Schwager shows us, some of the governor's proposals did not get through the legislature.
Governor Greg Abbott.
Thank you for being a constant advocate for
declaring victory on one of his top issues, bail reform.
The bail reform that I campaigned on and got passed is exactly what I want to turn into law.
The main reform Governor Abbott signed allows judges, like the ones in this building, to deny bail for certain defendants who are deemed either a flight risk or a danger to the community. The final decision, however, rests with the Texas voters.
This is going to pass overwhelmingly, and our goal, I think, should be around 90%.
While these reforms passed, a pair of Abbott-backed reforms failed, including a provision to automatically deny bail for certain repeat offenders and to automatically deny bail for people in the country illegally. Those failures led opponents of bail reform to say,
from that perspective, we are very happy to say that we see this as an overall victory.
And while Abbott was celebrating the bills that did pass, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was floating the idea of a special session to take another shot at the ones that didn't.
Whether it's in a special session or the next session, we will not stop until these criminals and these illegal immigrants who are here committing crimes and killing little girls under a bridge are put in jail forever and never let out on bail or bond.
Abbott says he fulfilled his promise he made to Texas voters earlier in the year, but did say that those failed proposals,
as Schwarzenegger would say, they're going to be back. And we are not done yet.
In Houston, I'm Adam Schwager.
The constitutional amendment vote will take place this November.
It is one of literally more than 1,000 bills on my desk.
The plan to ban THC now in the hands of Governor Abbott. Opponents want a veto. Supporters want his signature, what he's saying as both sides push to sway his decision. From schools and healthcare to criminal justice and constitutional law, our team's investigation sparked legislation to the Capitol. We track what passed and what could come back next time around. It may be the most controversial bill of the legislative session. Senate Bill 3 would ban hemp-based THC products now commonly sold in stores and online. The bill is on the governor's desk. Supporters want him to sign it into law. Opponents are lobbying for a veto. That controversy played out with dueling news conferences at the Capitol on the last day of the legislative session. On Monday, hemp industry leaders went to the Capitol to urge Governor Abbott to veto the THC ban and save their industry.
The hemp industry is a $10 billion a year enterprise employing over 53,000 Texans.
During the event, they addressed some of the accusations Patrick made, including his claim about not knowing what's in the consumable hemp products.
Texas law has mandated third-party lab testing and clear labeling. The only goal of these scare tactics was to frighten legislators and the public into going along with an agenda they did not ask for.
In a competing news conference, concerned parents told their stories.
What began as harmless habit quickly spiraled into a mental health crisis. He became paranoid, delusional, and convinced that the CIA and the Illuminati were following him.
And invited Republican lawmaker David Lowe, a war veteran.
I am deeply troubled that veterans are being used as props.
However, leaders of the Texas Department of Veterans of Foreign Wars who are advocating for a veto say Lowe doesn't represent them.
That's one veteran's opinion. I have written consent that I speak for 64,000 veterans in Texas, not just one.
After their press conference, hemp advocates delivered boxes of petitions calling for a veto to Governor Greg Abbott's office. He has until June 22nd to decide whether the ban will become law. At a news conference Tuesday, a reporter asked if he would sign the bill.
It is one of literally more than 1,000 bills on my desk. I will give all of those pieces of legislation the consideration and time that they deserve.
The reporter then asked the governor, as a dad, how he felt about the ban.
Very nice twist to the question. You're still not going to get an answer. Yeah.
Again, the governor has until June 22nd to decide if he's going to veto or sign the THC ban. If he fails to choose, the law will take effect without his signature. Children shot and killed in their school. Now a lawmaker from Uvalde works toward preventing mistakes made that deadly day.
I mean, can't change. I can't bring their children back. I can't change that.
The new legislation that will reshape the way emergency teams respond to mass shootings. Our team's investigation sparked legislation at the Capitol. We track the impact our stories are having on statewide policy. This session, lawmakers filed nearly 50 bills either sparked by or following our team's investigations. The legislation covered a wide range of topics from schools and healthcare to criminal justice and even constitutional law. We've had a lot to track this session, and we've covered every step of the process to keep you informed. 2 bills related to the state's do not hire registries made it to the governor. He's already signed SB 1437 into law, allowing the Texas Juvenile Justice Department to designate former employees or volunteers permanently ineligible for certification if they engage in conduct that threatens juvenile safety. The other he's expected to sign is SB 571, which expands the Texas Education Agency's authority to investigate volunteers and third-party contractors who work on school campuses and are accused of misconduct. Part of SB 1, the budget bill sent to the governor, includes a change to the state's crime victim compensation fund. We told you about the issue in our Held Up investigation. The fund pays victims and their loved ones for recovery costs and other things like funeral expenses. It requires the Attorney General's office, which manages the fund, to give a more accurate picture of how quickly victims are paid. Our investigation discovered a flawed data formula was showing a much shorter wait time, which was actually, on average, up to 8 months for a payment. The new law aims to have that happen in under 90 days. Another bill signed by the governor that will impact the Attorney General's office is SB 1403, dealing with the agency's child support division. It allows the AG to speed up procedures to cut down on unnecessary delays in delivering child support payments. The agency will now be able to get information directly to families at courthouses and on the AG's website. And a measure pushing Botox patient safety and transparency won't become law because Governor Abbott vetoed the legislation. Senate Bill 378 aimed to prohibit barbers, cosmetologists, and estheticians from administering Botox and other injectables unless they were licensed or authorized to give the shots. It would have also given the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation more disciplinary authority over those professionals. In his veto, Governor Abbott called the measure unnecessary and overly burdensome for businesses in Texas. Another bill sparked by our reporting would have expanded the use of medical examiners for death investigations in more counties across Texas. It came after we revealed most counties don't have medical examiners, doctors trained for that very purpose, and instead rely on elected justices of the peace who have little expertise in this area. SB 1370 died along with many other bills at a midnight House deadline last week, just one step from the governor's desk. But its sponsor tells us he plans to call for an interim charge to study how to attract more doctors with this expertise to fill the growing need in Texas ahead of the next session. Also looking ahead to the next session, the author of House Bill 1738 says he plans to refile his legislation to repeal the state's unconstitutional ban on homosexual conduct. We covered the issue in our Outlaw investigation. Our analysis shows since the 1980s, there have been at least 60 attempts to do just that. Most came since the U.S. Supreme Court's 2003 ruling struck down the law as unenforceable. HB 1738, which was filed after our Outlaw investigation, made it further in the legislative process than any of those past bills. Critics say leaving the old law on the books allows for misinterpretation by police and policymakers. You can find more details on the impact our investigative team made at the Capitol this session online. Just look for the links in this week's State of Texas story on this station's website. The last day of the session brought a surprise announcement from one of the most conservative members in the Texas House.
Texas is in good hands with each of you, and it's time for me to step aside.
Arlington Republican Tony Tinderholt announced his retirement after 6 terms in the legislature. Conservative members stood beside him as he read his farewell speech from the front mic.
I hope you recognize that each of the decisions you make will affect me and my family when I'm gone. My prayer is that this chamber recognizes all that Texas needs from you and that you never take for granted the immense honor and responsibility that comes with serving in the Texas House.
Tinderholt is known for pushing conservative legislation, but lawmakers from both sides of the aisle spoke kindly about his integrity and influence in the chamber. The day after his farewell speech, Tinderholt said he will run for Tarrant County Commissioner. He said it would allow him to continue public service while being home with his family. Houston Democrat Jolanda Jones had a big campaign announcement of her own. She's running for Congress. Jones has served 2 sessions in the Texas House. Before that, she served on the Houston City Council. She will join several other candidates in the special election for District 18. That's the seat left open when Congressman Sylvester Turner died in March. Election day is November 5th. Sometimes it's personal at the Capitol. We'll hear from 2 new Texas lawmakers and how their experiences led to new laws that hit close to home. 31 lawmakers just completed their first term in the Texas House. Some members of this year's freshman class had a distinct impact on legislation that moved from the Capitol to the governor's desk. Moments after the session ended, Will DuPree spoke with 2 of those new members. We start with Republican Don McLofflin. His experience as mayor of Uvalde led him to push through the Uvalde Strong Act. It requires Texas school districts to train alongside law enforcement agencies as part of a new statewide protocol to handle active shooting situations. It's legislation that could have a significant impact across the state.
It's very meaningful. I'm ecstatic over it, but at the same token, I'm sad that we had to pass a law like this, that required that to protect our schools the way we need to.
What would you say about how this would address some of the failures during that day 3 years ago?
Well, what I see in this bill more than anything is if an agency shows up, all these agencies have been training together, are supposed to be meeting together now. So if the first agency on the scene does nothing, the second agency immediately knows what to do. That we won't have that chaos and that indecision that we saw that day at Uvalde.
What communication have you had with the governor's office? Is it likely that he's going to sign this into law?
I saw the governor one day. He said it's an exciting piece of legislature. He led me to believe that yes, it will be signed and passed.
Okay, I know you'll be watching that very closely for sure.
Yes, sir, very closely.
Well, the families there in Uvalde, some of them who have lost children in this, I know that when you and I spoke just maybe a few months ago, you said you had not consulted with them about this particular legislation, but what would you hope they take away from this?
Well, we can't bring back their children. I wish we could. I wish we could turn the clock back and bring them back. But one of the things that they had mentioned in meetings that I had was communication with the officers, training with the officers, accountability with the officers. This bill will give them that in the future. I mean, can't change. I can't bring their children back. I can't change that. But no, going forward, if an agency fails to come to these trainings, doesn't do it, and something like this happens, they'll be able to hold those people accountable.
Will also spoke with Houston Democrat Lauren Ashley Simmons. The House Democratic Caucus named her Freshman of the Year. She told us about legislation that had personal significance.
I really want to talk to you about one that's awaiting the governor's signature, and that's House Bill 107. This would create a sickle cell disease registry here in Texas. I know that this is something very personal to you. So can you talk a little bit more about what inspired that legislation to bring that forward?
Absolutely. So I have to, first give, reverence to Representative Jarvis Johnson and Senator Boris Miles, who brought that bill forward last session and cleared the hurdles of both the House and the Senate, and it was vetoed on the governor's desk. And so my daughter has sickle cell disease. That was a bill I watched very closely. I was in tears when it did not become law, but I had no idea that I would be in the legislature and I would be that person that was able to bring that bill back. And so, from sitting at home crying with my daughter about it, fast forward to now, and not only, just every step of the way, it got a low bill number. It was a speaker priority. It is sitting on the governor's desk, and you really gain a lot of respect for the process when you see just how many ways a bill can die. I was joking with one of my colleagues, and I said, I thought that concurrence part was just largely ceremonial and just procedural, but, people were calling points of orders at that point. And so just understanding that at any given point, it is so much easier for a bill to die than get passed. I'm really, proud of the work we did as a team. And it was a bipartisan effort, so I'm very excited, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed and knocking on wood, but I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to get that sickle cell registry established.
You can see more from our interviews right now on our website. We have it all in this week's State of Texas story. Just look for the links to additional coverage from the session and the aftermath. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.